everybody, and welcome back into another edition of Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib. I'm Adam Hildebrandt alongside Tiger Football head coach Josh Blankenship. Coach, let's start on the defensive side of the ball this time. +4 in the turnover margin in that game against Moore on Friday. Why were you guys able to turn the Lions over so effectively?
Man, it's kind of one of those games. I was talking to our defense coordinator, Coach Mon, even going into the game. I said, this is a lot like arena ball. I mean, the way they play on offense, the way they go for it on fourth down. Analytics kind of go out the window. And then if you look at analytics for arena ball, we used to say if you can get 4 stops, you're going to win the game. You get 5 stops, you might dominate the game. So they really did a great job of holding down and staying the course for the 4 quarters, because that's easy to get frustrated with that quarterback and those receivers that they had. But pulling off those turnovers in a timely fashion, and then even the turnover on downs a few times were big.
Certainly the turnovers helped in the fourth quarter, but you guys got some just outright stops in the fourth quarter as well. It seemed like some of that was getting more pressure on the quarterback. Do you feel like you guys were able to increase your pressure on him over the course of that game and towards the end? Yeah,
he's tough to get pressure on too, because he moves around so well. But we did a couple of things, not huge adjustments, but trying to get Will Height a few more snaps. He really does a good job of bending the edge and pressuring the quarterback to move up. And then we did a better job of collapsing the pocket there in the fourth quarter. But overall, just tackling in space and settling into the game there in the second half, that's where those stops really made a difference, was tackling.
Dietrich Moore continues to kind of roam free and make big plays. He had 2 more interceptions in that game the other night. When he obviously has some freedom to move around a little bit. So in order to allow that to happen, what do those other 10 guys have to do to make sure that they're staying sound as well?
They've got to be lined up. I mean, it's very cliche football. They've got to be aligned right, and they've got to do their jobs. And then the way it's structured now is there's no secret about it. It's structured around Dietrich and freeing him up to be what he is. Obviously depends on everybody else doing their jobs.
And we'll hear from one of those guys who does that well, Shane Wyatt, here in just a little bit. We talked about Will Height, obviously Dietrich Moore. Who else stood out defensively in that game the other night?
Lane Condrey just seems to show up every game. If it's not a pick six or a scoop and score, it's just sound football throughout the game. Up front, Shane Wyatt is playing solid and with a lot of effort. And then Howard Scarborough, it's good having him back. He was coming off a concussion, but he's turned in, playing running back last year, converted to a corner this year. He just continues to progress, and then got a pick there at the end to seal the deal.
And a guy who, and we're going to talk about this in a little while too, but technically has to be very proficient because he's a little undersized at corner, and especially against some of the weapons that they had the other night, that's important. Did give up some yardage, obviously gave up some points in that game, so what still needs to improve on that defensive side of the ball?
Tackling in space. We've got to start faster. I think our hearts are still a little hurt from the week before in that Jinx game, and then the game getting moved from Friday, unexpectedly moved to Thursday. I think us adjusting to that and adapting is always a challenge, and we should be more in routine this week, having that extra day to rest. Those guys went through 2 wars really in 6 days, in that Jinx and the Moore game, and so getting healthy and then flying around and tackling better.
That's Tiger Football head coach Josh Blankenship. We'll be back with more in just a moment here on Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib.
Right now, get $200 from TTCU Federal Credit Union when you open a new checking account with direct deposit. What would you buy with $200?
Cars, race cars, my own apartment, 100 coloring books, and a puppy.
Or maybe some groceries and a tank of gas. $200 for whatever works for you from TTCU, because life is better in balance.
Welcome back into Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib. I'm Adam Hildebrandt alongside Tiger Football head coach Josh Blankenship. Coach, let's flip over to the other side of the ball here. Lots of good things offensively in that game the other night. Nate Jones went for well over 200 yards. Caden Jones went for well over 100 yards. When you have multiple backs that are having that kind of success, you got to start with the offensive line. What did those guys do so well in that game on Thursday?
They were so efficient. We're seeing a loaded box. When I say loaded box, I don't even mean the traditional 7, 8. I mean, we're seeing 9 every week. Knowing their jobs and be able to hat everybody up and then get your running back on a safety or a DB, you always got a shot when you can do that. And then you got the shot to be explosive too. If you can bust through that front 9, there's nobody else back there. And so that's why you'll see some big runs on occasion. Credit to those guys up front, but Nate Jones and KD are special, and it's awesome watching how that whole group has progressed, and we've really got some things we feel like we can hang our hat on.
Yeah, Nate Jones in particular has had a solid year, but he hasn't had a huge breakout game like he had the other night. Was there anything that was special about him or different from him specifically on Thursday?
He's just so thick and physical that I think in that type of game where we were determined to run the ball for 4 quarters, he is really hard to tackle in the fourth quarter once you're tired. He's special in the first, second, and third, but he's a difference maker there in the fourth quarter just because of how physical he runs.
Another guy who had a big breakout game the other night was Cade Matthews, 187 yards, a couple of scores. What allowed to have him to have his biggest game of the year?
Well, he's played well all year. He was kind of one of those guys we thought was going to have a breakout year. He came to us late in the season, was a baseball guy. He was ready to come play some football again. Developed well last year, and we were excited to see what he'd do. He's just uber talented. I would put him up there with any other receiver in the state as far as the ability and the talent and the skill set. He's a big, long target, times the ball well in the air. And then the way Owen's throwing the ball right now, the chemistry those guys have is to counter that with the run game right now is what we've got to have.
That was actually who I was going to go to next was Owen Jones, because we've seen him take deep shots this year and just didn't quite connect on a handful of them early. Is there anything specifically that he's improved on in terms of delivering the ball down the field?
500 fights. He was a sophomore, had never started a high school game early in the season, and you go compare his efficiency from the first half to the second half, and I really think it's just a matter of experience and reps and being poised in those moments to connect when you've got a guy. Whether he's wide open or covered, the ball placement right now is excellent from Owen.
The other thing, it seemed like, at least from what we could tell up top, was that he had more time to throw it downfield. Did the pass protection grade out better this last week?
It did. They weren't a big pressure defense, so I expected us to. This will be a more challenging week going into this week if we can continue to protect. Not to take any credit away from our guys. They're doing a great job. But it was a stop the run mentality more than they wanted to bring a bunch of pressure, which we'll kind of see the opposite of that this week.
We'll be looking forward to seeing how that plays out. That's Tiger football head coach Josh Blankenship. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib.
Recently, you've had to put your life on hold, and we're with you in this. At Ascension St. John, we're now open for appointments, and we are fully prepared for your safety and our care. As we open our doors again, our doctors, nurses, and care teams will continue to wear personal protective equipment. We've taken even more steps to clean and stringently disinfect all areas. We will maintain distancing in our waiting rooms, and will continue to limit visitors. And we will still screen all staff to protect their health and yours. Our emergency rooms are here 24/7. Please do not delay care. We're still delivering babies and performing surgeries. And we're open for your appointments, from specialists and surgical care to routine care and health screenings. Ask us about virtual visits. Ascension St. John continues to care for you, as we have been for almost a century. Thank you for trusting us.
Hey, welcome back to Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib. I'm Adam Hildebrandt, joined, of course, by Josh Blankenship. We've got Shane Wyatt and Ross Martin, a couple of linemen with us, opposite sides of the line, so we sat them on opposite sides of the table. Not really. It was already playing that way. That's how it always happens, but we'll stick with it. All right, Shane, let's start with you. You battled with some injuries at the beginning of the season, didn't play for the first couple of weeks. What did you kind of learn from that experience as you were working back from that and trying to get back on the field?
Really just patience. I had to have a lot of patience. Like almost 10 months out of football, it was really hard to stay off the field and get my rehab done.
What were some things that you, obviously rehab and trying to get back healthy, but what did you do to kind of stay ready and improve as much as you could while you weren't able to physically go out and practice?
Yeah, I tried to stay healthy. Rehab, just eating right, drinking a lot of water, all that kind of stuff.
He did a really good job in addition to his rehab of still putting on good weight in the offseason in the weight room. He was, as a junior, probably still undersized and really had a good offseason even in spite of the knee and rehabbing through that.
That's impressive. I think I'd probably pretty much shut it down, knowing myself at that point. What do you feel like are some strengths that you bring to this defensive line?
I think I'm definitely like a run stopper, run first kind of guy. I just fill my gaps, do my job. Nothing special, nothing flashy.
You got to have some of that on the defensive line. What about outside of football? What else do you like to do?
I like fishing, hunting, video games, track.
Should have known probably from the full beard from the high school senior that was probably going to be the direction that was going to go. All right, let's go over to Ross Martin. Last week?
Speaking of beards,
yeah, there's some full facial hair going on at this table this morning. You've got coming off arguably the best week of the year offensive line wise. Ran for almost 400 yards last week. What do you guys feel like you did well last week up front?
Just running the plays that we run best. Being really consistent, getting better every week. I think we're peaking at the right time.
You guys have shuffled around at times in terms of guys moving to different positions. Is that challenging, or do you feel like that's made you better as an offensive line because you can interchange a little bit?
I think it's definitely made us better. I mean, the inside three guys are pretty much interchangeable. We can all move around. It's a lot of the same blocking schemes for the same guys. We have a lot of guys that can snap, put their hand on the ground, so we're pretty versatile up there.
As an individual, what's the best part of your game, do you think?
I think I'm a really good technician. I think I have really good technique in my blocks, and I also don't have many mental busts. I'm pretty consistent with that.
Yeah, let's talk about that technique a little bit, because there are guys that, you faced a couple guys that were like, what the Union kid was like 6'4", 340 or something like that. When you're matched up against somebody like that, how does that technique come into play in terms of you still being capable of blocking him?
Keeping a low pad level. Don't get your hips high, and then keep your hands inside. Get your hands on him first. If you can do that, you can usually control him.
I'm going to ask this question anyway, but you have a Bass Pro hat on. So what do you do away from football?
Well, I'm a big fishing guy, big outdoors guy. I love going to the lake. Anytime I can get, I go fishing probably. And just, hanging out, playing video games.
We'll add some variety here. What lake do you most frequent when you're going fishing?
Grand Lake.
Grand Lake. All right, that's a good way to go. I'd spent a lot of time on Skytook as a kid. I had some friends that had a boat up there, but haven't been to Grand Lake quite as much. So there you go. Fishermen. I think that's got to be, if we took an exit poll, that's like 95% of the guys that we've talked to over the course of this year. But Ross, Shane, thanks very much for giving us some time, and good luck this week.
Thank you.
Back with more in just a moment. This is Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib.
For families who like to build their wealth while staying liquid, we have flexible rate CDs to keep your funds working hard, even when you're not. First National Bank of Broken Arrow. The right balance.
Hey everybody, welcome back in one more time to Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib. You got Norman coming up this week. You get to host a playoff game to start things off here. What have you seen from Norman as you've prepared from this game?
We're somewhat familiar with them. They were in our district last year. We had to go to their place late in the season, and they were ready for us. Walked into a buzzsaw defensively. They were, we thought we had really started to explode with Marion last year, and found some things with he and Sterling in the run game, and they really stuffed us and stopped us there for a big chunk of the game. We ended up finding a couple things to squirt through and connect on, and ended up pulling away. Defensively, they were very, very dangerous last year. Offensively, same story this year. They've got a little quarterback that can go. He's one of the leading rushers in the state. I mentioned that he's little because he's behind a huge O-line, and so a lot of smoke and mirrors back there with what they do, whether it be Wildcat or using the back as a runner, or flipping it at the last minute, and the running back acting like the quarterback that could hand it to the actual quarterback who runs like a running back. So we got our hands full there. If we can contain him, tackle well, and if we can be more efficient on offense, especially if we get behind the chains and get a penalty that puts us back, we got to find a way to dig out of those. But very dangerous team. There's nobody we play that is not very talented, and especially going to the playoffs, people pretty much know who they are, and they're operating within their identity.
And when all was said and done in the regular season, we ended up having 5 Thursday games, which is kind of crazy to think about. Is it helpful timing to have that one come at the end, even though it was unexpected, to give you that extra day of rest? You're at the end of a long season, guys are beat up, and have that going into the playoffs?
Yeah, looking back on it, you're grateful for it now, because you've got some guys that went through 2 really brutal games in 6-day span. So having that extra day for them to recover and recoup, but having another day to prep a little bit. and it's even. They've got that other day as well. But it definitely gives you a little bit more time to kind of double check, what your plans are and why, and find any errors in it. So grateful for that extra day for sure.
Broken Arrow and Norman, first-round playoff action coming at you Friday night at Tiger Memorial Stadium. Looking forward to that one on Arrow Vision as well. That's Tiger football head coach Josh Blankenship, and this has been Inside Tiger Football, brought to you by Rib Crib.